She started with a simple idea and has turned it into a company that provides economic security for women in this country and abroad. Stacy Edgar is the founder of Global Girlfriend, an online and wholesale fair trade company that helps women market and sell their products. These products include clothing, jewelry, gift items, and more. We'll learn more about the issues that women in third world countries face and how companies like Global Girlfriend are giving them the chance to market their products and make a fair wage. Stacy was a guest speaker during EIU's School of Business Global Entrepreneurship Week, and we had the chance to hear her story. Our interview is coming up next on At Issue, so don't go away. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for taking time out to visit with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to college?
I am from Hinckley, Illinois, so a small town right between Aurora and DeKalb, which is about 3.5 hours from here, which I know because I just made that drive. And I went to Western Illinois University for undergrad. I have a bachelor's in social work, and then I went to U of I for graduate school to get my master's.
Now, tell us a little bit about your family.
I am married to Brad Edgar, who is the son of former Governor Jim Edgar, and Brenda Edgar, who are Eastern Illinois alumni.
Okay. And where do you and your husband and your children currently reside?
We live in Littleton, Colorado, so just in the foothills, in the beautiful foothills outside of Denver, and we've lived there for about 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your journey from college to this great idea that you came up with.
Well, I went to college actually to be a journalist. That was my first major, and I happened to take an intro to social work class kind of as just a social science elective, and thought, ooh, I think this is really for me. I don't necessarily think I'm going to be the best at reporting on stories. I like being in them, I guess. I liked being in people's business. So I have had some great jobs here in Illinois. Before we moved to Colorado, I've worked in child welfare. I've done things for DCFS. I worked in a residential treatment facility right out of college, which was a really interesting job. I am still good friends with a lot of the kids that lived there during that time. And then when we moved to Colorado, I worked for the Denver Public Schools and then the Education Commission of the state. So I really have a nonprofit background, right? I've always worked in schools, worked with women, worked with children, and that was really my bent. But I also grew up in a family that had a small business. My parents run a concrete factory that has been in business for 100 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't know what I actually knew about business until this idea kind of came along.
Okay, so explain where the idea for Global Girlfriend came from.
Well, really it's a combination. Being a social worker, you see a lot of women who are really hardworking, and their challenge is money, right? So when I worked in Chicago in child welfare, we had a lot of women that we placed in an organization called the Enterprising Kitchen, which unfortunately is no longer in business. But it was a social enterprise where women could go and learn job skill training, be employed for about 18 months, and then springboard into better work. So that was kind of how I got introduced to social enterprise.
Okay.
Fast forward to living in Denver, my mother-in-law and father-in-law left office after he was no longer governor, and were asked to be on a board of the World Food Program. So Brenda took a really amazing trip to Ethiopia with the food program. And one of the main things she came back with was, you know, first of all, just stories of the people she had met and kind of the poverty that she had seen, but also great necklaces, baskets, scarves, right? Talking about these really enterprising women who were spending all day in the sun trying to sell their handmade crafts to aid workers.
Okay.
A lot of skill, not a lot of market. So we really talked for 3 years about, gosh, those women and how could you help them provide a market? And as a social worker, I think my main skill, because I don't know that you can always pinpoint your skill as a social worker, but my main skill, I think, was being a good listener and being a connector, trying to figure out what do people need and how do you get them the resources they need? How do you connect them? And in this case, it was connecting to a market. So that's kind of how the idea was born.
And when was that? What year?
Well, really 2002.
Okay.
But the company launched in 2003.
Okay.
It took a few months to get product and get things going.
So how did you decide? Where did you? Brenda had made that trip. Then where did it go from there? How did you find these women in these different countries and sort of pull that all together?
Well, it started pretty small.
Okay.
Right? I started with about 5 international groups, a couple of whom Brenda had met on her trip to Ethiopia, and then some others that I had reached out to in weird ways, just kind of searching them out. And then some U.S. nonprofits, the Enterprising Kitchen, like I talked about in Chicago. There's a group just like that in Denver called the Women's Bean Project, which is also a work training program for women who have been homeless, who are just out of prison. And we kind of put that combination together. And I registered as a business because it was much simpler than registering as a nonprofit.
Okay.
But I don't know if I fully understood the scope the first night I had a home party at my house. I just invited about 100 of my really good friends over to say, here's this idea. I want to support these women. What do you think? And it really has snowballed from there, yeah.
So it was one of those, I have no idea where this is going to go kind of ideas.
Yeah, and really, kind of convince my husband. I used mine and my husband's $2,000 tax refund to launch the business. I kind of convinced him, hey, and worst case scenario, I'll just sell all this stuff and that'll be that, right? So he's okay.
So a $2,000 investment of your own money and your own time launched this program. Let's talk about the women that are involved in it. What countries are they? What countries are represented by Global Girlfriend?
We now work in 21 countries. So we started with about 3 countries, and I would say some of the primary places that we work a lot in Africa, in Kenya, in Uganda, in South Africa, Ghana, Congo, which we're very, very proud of, and then India, Nepal, Vietnam, Cambodia, so all over. Also, lots of Latin American countries, Guatemala especially.
Are there women in the United States that are involved in the program?
Absolutely, yeah. We still work with 7 different women's nonprofits that do kind of work training to move women on, usually from homeless situations and more, sadly, women coming out of prison who really need a new launch pad on their new life.
So what kind of stories, if you look at the website and you look at the products, it'll kind of give a little bit of story of some of the women. Tell us about some of the hardships that some of these women have faced in their lives.
Some of these women are the most tenacious people I have ever met. Whenever I am frustrated or think things are bad for me, I'm like, not really. We work with one group in Gulu, Uganda, who suffered through 20 years of the Lord's Resistance Army. I don't know if you saw the Coney 2012 campaign that Invisible Children kind of had all over the internet. We work with women who have lived most of their adult lives in internally displaced camps. One of the best stories is one that I start in my book of my friend Josephine, a woman who lives in the Dandora slums in Nairobi, who had very, very little, could barely afford to send her 2 kids to school. And she and 2 friends decided that what they were able to do was traditional craft. And so, but they had no money to kind of start that craft business. So they started cleaning offices and cleaning hotels and pooling their money until they could buy a sewing machine and rent a market stall and kind of launch their business locally until they could kind of reach out farther. So yeah, it's amazing to me how organized and tenacious some of these women are.
Well, and when you think about the conditions that they maybe have lived in, a lot of them were, I think you had saw on the website, a lot of them involved in sex trafficking.
That's another amazing group. We work with several different anti-trafficking groups, but one of the most amazing is a group called Free Set. They're in Kolkata, which is the old Calcutta, India. And it's a group that was started by a couple from New Zealand. This couple and their 4 kids, they decided out of Christian mission that they wanted to move to India. They had not been to India.
Okay.
They rented a flat, sight unseen, got there at 1 in the morning, moved in the next morning to wake up, go down in their new neighborhood and find that they had moved to the middle of the red light district, Sanagachi, which is Asia's largest red light district. But instead of moving like sane people would have, or you know, they kind of took their time in trying to figure out, okay, this is the community that we're meant to help, and how do we help them? And they started kind of a nonprofit, and they started trying to get donations and realized that would never solve the problem, because the problem was an economic one. You had to provide women with alternatives once they had been stolen, trafficked, many of these women taken from Nepal and Bangladesh, far from their homes. So they have started a t-shirt and bag business that is unbelievable, 3 blocks off of Sanagachi.
Wow. So how does this all work from a business point of view? You get the items from the women. I mean, everything is sold on the Global Girlfriends site. You don't have actual stores, do you?
No, but we partner with stores. So our largest partner is Whole Foods Market.
Okay.
So we're in over 200 Whole Foods stores around the country. We also partner now with Target.com. And you can find a selection of our things on Target. And then about 1,000 boutiques around the country, bookstores, different small shops. But the way it works is really simple, because it is, again, a social business. We work with the group to design the product. So when we start with a new group, what we would do is kind of take a look at their skill set. What skills do they have? What materials do they have? And then the skills and the materials that they have are what we're going to translate into what we think might sell in the Western marketplace.
Okay.
It's not always that, you know, I have a group, for example, in India who makes doilies. Doilies are not hot.
No.
So we've worked with them to figure out, you know, they now make us little cute crocheted cosmetic bags. They're working on scarves. So that we're taking their skills and their materials and translating them into a product we think that women will like and buy. Once we've come up with the design, then we would place the order. And the way it works, we're a fair trade company. So in a fair trade model, we would give them the order and we would wire them the first 50%, because we don't ever want women to be putting out their money for our beads, our fabric. So we're providing that capital kind of as an advanced microloan upfront for them to be able to make the product. And then at the time that it's ready to go, we pay all the shipping, take care of all that coordination, and we pay them the last 50%. So they're paid fully upfront. And it's all a fair trade living wage. We really work hard with them on doing time studies, making sure that they are covering all their costs and making a good profit. Then we get the goods in and it's up to us to sell it. I always say, you know, we're the marketing arm, their production, we're shared creative.
So in what ways have you seen that this enterprise has changed the lives of these women?
I've seen amazing changes. I've seen really small groups expand to 20 or 30 women, which it provides a lot for that community. I've been to women's homes where they have little to nothing, small sheds, and when we've gone back again, they have cement floor, they have, you know, even in Guatemala, one of the women got a TV, and it was just huge, right? It was just, everybody's over to watch their TV. And they've been able to send their kids to school. I think that's the number one asset that these women take away from their business, is the ability to feed their families, to provide them health care, and to send them to school.
So are you surprised at how this has taken off?
Oh, shocked. Shocked. I think one thing again, as a social worker, and I have learned that this is a great business skill too, but it's just partnering, right?
Right.
Whether it's partnering with the women, partnering with stores, partnering with our customers, trying to tell a good story, right? So that we can kind of be a bridge and connect people. And I think at the time we started in 2003, people were really hungry for that information. It was sort of new at that time. 10,000 Villages, like you said, and Serve International had been around for a long time, but I think sort of on-trend accessories that women would buy anyway, even if they didn't know about the cause, and then to be able to support a cause they believed in, I really think that was kind of the magic combination. Yeah.
So you've taken your story and you've written a book. Where did that come from?
Well, a couple, like I said, I did want to be a journalism major when I started out this path. So I've always liked to write, and really Global Girlfriend has given me a good opportunity to write, in that we're constantly trying to tell the women's stories, tell the product stories, tell about the places they live, and really connect women here to the women we work with around the world. But in late 2007, almost 2008, we actually merged with a larger company, the Greater Good Network, who runs the hunger site, the breast cancer site, a lot of really fabulous do-good websites. And I feel like we lost a little bit of our storytelling. Their technology platform didn't allow for some of the things that we had the luxury of prior. Although it helped expand our market, it helped bring more traffic to our website and a larger network. So it was good for the women, but what I felt was not so great for the women or our customers was that connect. So that's really why I wanted to write the book, because I wanted to be able to tell more in depth about some of the women that we work with.
So tell us about the process of writing this story.
Yeah, it was quite a process. I really started in 2008 and it came out in 2011. So it was a long process. It was also a process of finding who would publish it, right? So it's great to write a story, but then you have to find somebody who actually wants to publish it so you can get readers. And it was very funny. I was looking for an agent and kind of sending out query letters and trying to get some interest. And I was in Haiti at visiting a group, and I had taken John Grogan, who wrote Marley and Me. I had taken his second book, which was really about his family life, and I got stuck in the airport in Haiti. And I hadn't cracked it because I thought, oh, I'll read this book in my spare time in Haiti, and there is no spare time. But I ended up at the airport for several hours reading it, and I flipped to, I just loved his writing style, very conversational, and flipped to the back and saw who his agent was. Queried her the next week, and
there you go.
There we go.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
So how has this experience shaped and changed your life? I mean, you were involved in social work, so you had that desire to help others, but how has this changed you?
I think, interestingly, when I started this business, I didn't even have a passport, right? I hadn't traveled out of the country. I think growing up in a small rural town in Illinois, I thought my town was really small and the world was really big. And now I think the world is pretty small, and the lessons from that small town are pretty big. I think we all need to kind of see ourselves in a global neighborhood, whether or not you travel outside the country or not.
Right.
And I suggest that everyone does. But the water issues, the energy issues, the population issues, poverty, these things, they will impact what happens right here. And I think it's important for us all to think of ourselves as one community. And that's really the biggest change for me. Also, just finding how amazingly entrepreneurial women and men all over the world are. People who have nothing are so much more just enterprising than I've ever thought of being.
Yeah, and you just kind of, you wonder, well, what's my excuse? We live here in the United States, the land of opportunity and plenty, and then you look at these people, women who have nothing and can make something of of their situation.
And the other thing that I've really learned is that some of the things that we have lost or let go of in our country as we've modernized, as we've grown up, strong family, real commitment to one another in your neighborhood, that is alive and well in these places. When I go visit Nepal, I stay in a household of 14 and no one would ever think of sending one of their elderly relatives to live anywhere other than in the bedroom right next to them.
Right.
And so that's also been just a great lesson that I've tried to bring back to my family.
So as we wrap up, you're here as part of the School of Business at Eastern as part of their Global Entrepreneurship Week, and you're giving a speech. What are some of the things that you want that audience to take away after hearing what you have to say?
Well, hopefully the main thing that I really hope students, community members will get is that it's possible. What you want to do, it's kind of mission in the moment. I think we can all make a difference. I think all you have to do is take a look at your strengths and your interests and passions and figure out how to apply those. Whether you're a secretary, whether you are the governor of the state, everybody has the ability to make a difference and reach out to your community. And I think that's the most important message.
So what's next for you?
Well,
I'm sure you've got plans.
I think at Global Girlfriend, one of the things we're really working on is developing more corporate partnerships where we're doing some sourcing for larger corporations. We did a project for Cargill last year, which was really fantastic, taking this huge food company that people certainly don't think of as a fair trade organization, and who that's not their core mission, but they're interested in social responsibility. And so finding ways to connect some of our women's groups to these larger companies who are really waking up to the importance of it, and connecting them, that's really an important thing that we're working on. And then personally, I'm working on a couple projects. The one thing I really regret in Global Girlfriend is that as we've grown and supplied to Whole Foods, supplied to Target.com, some of the crafts that we've had to tend towards are those that you and I could learn, right? We could learn to sew, we could learn to block print, and some of the really traditional time-intensive crafts, more expensive crafts, are not the ones that Whole Foods has picked up. And so we're starting actually another kind of side brand among women, fair trade, where we're going to focus on those traditional craft items, which take longer, cost a little more, but really the women who make them, that is just a valuable skill that you don't want to see culturally go away. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've got lots of plans, lots of great things. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.